All right. Well, I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Brian Canada. I am the chair of the Computer Science and Mathematics Department at the University of South Carolina, Beaufort, located not too far from Hilton Head Island, Savannah, Georgia, and Charleston, South Carolina. It's my great pleasure to serve as the moderator for this panel on cybersecurity and privacy in a fast-changing world, part one. There will be a part two of with a different set of panelists tomorrow at roughly the same time, I believe around 11:30 a.m. to 12:20 p.m. I will briefly mention that at USCB, we are in the infancy, relatively speaking, of a cybersecurity academic program effort. We have a relatively new bachelor's program called Information Science Technology. And in the fall of 2021, we started offering a concentration in cybersecurity within that academic program. And we are very excited that this fall semester's commencement, we will be graduating our first students from that concentration in cybersecurity within the ISAT major, Information Science and Technology major. We are hoping within the next few months to start a program review process with the Department of Homeland Security and the National Security Agency, so that within a few years, we will be certified, USCB will be certified as a Center of Academic Excellence in Cyber Defense. That's all I'm going to say about USCB and myself. I'm going to turn, I want to introduce all of our panelists. Our first speaker today is going to be Paul Hammond. He is the Chief Information Security Officer, CISO of Cantaloupe, where he has held that position since 2021. As the CISO, he leads the company's cybersecurity efforts. He has extensive experience in product security, information security, cloud security, and cybersecurity program development. He brings more than 20 years of experience driving transformational change using innovative technologies across both federal and civilian agencies and commercial organizations. And he previously has held leadership roles in information security for Truist Financial Services, as well as Capital One. Paul, whenever you're ready, please take it away.
Thank you for the introduction, Brian. I appreciate it. And glad to be on the panel with all the other panelists today, and very excited to have the conversation with everybody. Let me go ahead and pull my slides up. Zoom tells me everybody can see those.
We sure can. Everything looks great.
Okay, great. All right, so high-level metric information that I pulled up as far as, so I went after cybersecurity aspects a little bit first before we kind of shift over into some of the privacy aspects, and I was going to talk about some of the lineage that I'm starting to see there, which I'm sure some of my colleagues on the panel are also starting to see some of those things and trends as well. From essentially 2020 through 2021, and then we're starting to see the same trends coming into 2022 with an increase of ransomware attacks across all industries, all verticals. And as usual, 51%, US is still leading and being attacked. So go us. We're leading everybody else at 51% of the attacks are still coming towards the United States at this point. The variants of the attacks have changed a little bit. With Conti variant, we've seen a 228% increase and Conti variants being spread coming in through ransomware. There's been increase across government sectors, and the retail sector that I'm currently working in has also seen 100% increase in these types of attacks. I know personally with inside of our own environment, with the types of attacks, coming in through our email layer, we certainly have seen a significant increase in those attacks coming in through there, as well as the level of sophistication of those attacks that have been coming in. This information here, quick little slide just to show that trend that we've been seeing with the increases from 2020 coming into 2021. all the information is not in for 2022 just yet, but the earlier trends that we've started to track here at the beginning of the year show that those ransomware attacks are on the increase there as well. Now I'm going to pivot over to another piece away from ransomware, because this is where we've started to see the ransomware starting to come in the most, rather than them taking advantage of some type of a vulnerability someplace. They're usually coming in through a business email compromise or a phishing attempt. And I've seen all of these upticks across all types of the phishing attacks this year, with block phishing, spear phishing, whaling, smishing, and vishing. I know the smishing and vishing has been, at least for me and people that I know, has been off the scales recently. Lots of attacks and attempts to do social engineering via text messages coming in. I probably receive something almost weekly from somebody somewhere, whether it's business related or personally related, of some type of a text message that people have received where they're trying to convince the person to click on the link in the text message. Increases across the board, same types of trends that we've seen with ransomware as well. Another thing that they've started to do is abusing brands. Attackers piggybacking off of big tech names like Amazon and Microsoft or eBay, Google, Zoom, Netflix, any of the big tech companies out there. You know, I probably know somebody that has seen some type of phishing attack, whether email or via text, that has been coming in recently with an attempt to try and social engineer them by clicking on something and then advance their attack from there. Why does this matter into privacy? Well, since businesses and organizations and universities have been doing a better job at protecting their environments, the attackers also improve their attack methods, the complexity and sophistication of their attack methods. Part of that, what they've started to do and also realize, is that people are using a lot of BYOD devices. Those BYOD devices may not, and a lot of times are not held to the same security standards that we would put our company or organizational equipment at. And a lot of times we have to be a little bit more flexible on what we can and can't do when we start dealing with BYOD devices coming into the environment. So what the attackers have started to do is attack people not from their business persona, but from their own personal personas, their social media accounts, and then they try and use those footholds into the person's personal persona and identity to leapfrog over into their business persona or identity, so that then they can start to look for ways to continue to elevate either privileges or continue their attack to try and get somebody to potentially send funds to a location that hasn't really been approved through some type of a fraudulent invoice or bank transfer means. That's all I had for today. Just covering some high-level information, and then how I've seen some of these, both the cybersecurity landscape, the threat landscape, along with the business email compromises and ransomware getting tied in. And now it's coming back over from a privacy standpoint, and people are being attacked in their own personal lives, so that the attackers can try and use that to get back over into the organizations to get to the type of information and data that they typically want to try and get.
Very good. Very good. Thank you so much, Paul. Really appreciate the very high level overview of what's going on in ransomware. I've written down some possible questions that I may ask during the Q&A session, some of which will be probably for the benefit of, I see some of my own students in the audience here, some of whom have not taken any cybersecurity courses yet. So I may ask you some questions that are, probably going to be a little bit on the elementary side for their benefit. But thank you again, Paul. Let's switch over to our next speaker. That's going to be Alex Pelaez. He is an associate professor of information systems and business analytics at Hofstra University. And he is also the CEO of a company called 5E Analytics, sometimes called 5-Element Analytics. He has broad experience across a number of industries with a career that's been lasting over 20 years. His specialties have included strategic implementation of technology assets and technical resources. He has successfully managed multiple large systems implementations, including enterprise data warehouses on the scale of 10 to 50 terabytes. Customer relationship management systems, financial and payroll systems, e-commerce sites, and more. And he has helped C-level executives design overall technology strategies, and he has recommended and implemented sorry about that. I've got my own timer here. Thank you, sorry about that. He has helped executives design overall technology strategies, recommendations for organizational restructuring, and ROI, return on investment-based initiatives, and forward-looking social media strategies. And as I mentioned, at Hofstra, he's a professor of information systems, and he teaches courses in e-commerce, IT strategic management, and he's a published author on a number of technology-related topics. Please welcome Alex Pelaez.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I didn't have any slides prepared because I just wanted to also really have a conversation about what's going on in the industry. I'm going to break it up into three kind of parts. The first part, I want to talk to you about what's happening with some of the clients or people that we advise in terms of cybersecurity. One of the things with all the different complexities of cyber attacks and data privacy, data regulations, it's really important to simplify for a lot of companies their approach to information technology, the ecosystem that they have. And one of the biggest ways that we're advising clients to do that is really to move stuff into the cloud, to remove some of the complexity within their own environment. So they move to Azure, they move to AWS, they work with their vendors to push out their technologies, their software, and allow the vendor to actually gain an economy of scale and utilize their resources and expertise to ensure the integrity of their environment. It is really difficult for a lot of small to mid-sized firms to have a robust information technology department to handle cyber attacks and get the right assets in order to protect the environment. And so leveraging these vendors is actually very important to do that. It's also cost effective because trying to build out an effective defensive layer from the utilities that go on individual devices, and as the previous speaker said, anybody can bring in their own device. The complexity is just enormous for a lot of small and mid-sized firms. So leveraging vendors to do that and paying them to bring that expertise to the table is extremely important. Now, for the companies that are engaging the vendors, they have to understand what is happening. They have to be able to assess the risks. They have to be able to manage that contractual obligation with those vendors in order to be able to effectively engage in that contract and ensure that their assets are safe. And the way they do that is really by a lot of learning and a lot of questions, and then hiring counter vendors to actually audit their trail, figure out what is ultimately happening. The second piece is the evolving landscape is just, it really is just evolving so much and so fast that it is hard to keep up. We're seeing certain sophisticated attacks taking down certain governments. Here on Long Island, Suffolk County is still suffering from a major ransomware attack that affects a lot of clients, some of the clients that we have, in terms of dealing with the county government. And they're on paper for certain things that affected their 911 system for a while, and they had to actually take calls via paper. So the risks of not doing it or not handling this are very large, and we have to make sure that our senior teams as well as the mid-level teams are all educated in terms of how to mitigate these risks, how to handle the risks, and when something happens, be able to respond effectively. And that is a very, very important aspect of every organization. We're all intertwined. It's not just cybersecurity for one firm, it's cybersecurity for all the firms within a given ecosystem. And really the third area is a little bit more on the research that we do and some of the things that we do here at 5E. It's utilizing data science to analyze the data of traffic that's coming in, of access levels, and be able to discern whether or not traffic is fraudulent, whether or not, there's a propensity for an attack in a certain area. One of the things that we're trying to research is, can we determine, and we've done this before, can we determine things like dark traffic that's not real? We actually wrote a paper years ago for a conference. We're trying to get more data to actually expand on this, to identify illegal traffic or traffic that is not real to a retail site, to a blogger site or news organization. And the reason that's important is because a lot of times cyber attacks, will come under this dark traffic type of paradigm. These are simulated attacks, and you can identify certain patterns. One of the things that we know is that attacks that are generated by a computer will have a different variant structure than if it was by a human, because a human will change their cadence in terms of, as a human's interacting with a website, they will end up spending a lot more time at the beginning. They'll spend a little less time because they'll be clicking. And then at the end, when they've determined what they wanted, they spend a little bit more time. So their cadence of interaction is very different. Whereas if there's an automated feature, something that's trying to probe, something that's trying to attack, generally speaking, you won't see those variances in the cadence of their interactivity. You will see these constant attacks, and examining that type of traffic, that type of interaction could lead you to determine whether or not this is a real type of interaction or whether it is a fraudulent or specifically an attack in a particular area. So I think, and for the students that are out there, I think you're in a great field. And I wish this field was a little bit more prevalent when I was younger, because I don't think it can get any more exciting. But I will add, it is a very stressful area because you have to be right. You can't be wrong once. The other folks can be wrong, only have to be right once. But it's a great opportunity, and honestly, it's a great skill set to have. And for the companies out there, it's learning how to mitigate the risks. It's learning how to meet those challenges and how to respond effectively. So I'll leave it at that because I know we're short on time as well.
Thank you so much, Alex. I really like that phrase, the cadence of interaction. I think I'm going to come back to that in the Q&A. So thank you again, Alex. That was really, really cool. Our last speaker for this session is Dr. Hala Strohmeyer-Berry. She's an assistant professor and the director of cyber at the University of South Carolina, Aiken, a fellow USC System campus about 2 hours away from here in Beaufort. Prior to that, she was a computer science lecturer at the University of North Carolina in Wilmington. And throughout Dr. Strohmeyer's career, she has received numerous awards and recognitions related to her experience in business management. Among her many certifications are, she's a certified information systems auditor. She's also certified in the governance of enterprise IT and as a project management professional and as an AWS, Amazon Web Services cloud practitioner. Her primary areas of research are of research interest are cybersecurity, supply chain cybersecurity, cloud computing, cybersecurity, computer and network security, cyber risk management, national security, and cyber policies. It's a pleasure for me to introduce Dr. Strohmeyer. Take it away when you're ready.
Thank you so much. So thank you for having us today as well. It's my first time to be a panelist in this conference, and I hope I'll be invited again. I'm going to talk briefly about some of the research I'm doing. Not going to talk about my ransomware attack research that I just published, but I'm going to talk about something different to carry over from my other two colleagues. They have been talking about the ransomware attack, the phishing attacks, the different attacks that are happening. We talked about Alex talked about the risk and risk assessment and what you do with it, but we needed to talk a little bit more about our users. And because you get those attacks when you have a user. So I looked at the cybercrime in general, and I see it is on the rise. So it's not going to come down anytime soon. And then you see that we have now deployed the 5G technology, which will add more devices and will have more connectivity to IoTs and you name it. I also looked at my students, and they are born to the digital age. and they are the one who's using mainly social media. They do online gaming, streaming videos, streaming TV, everything pretty much they are doing it in the digital space. So I was like, okay, so let me look at my students and see, are they really have good awareness about cybersecurity? Are they know about their privacy, especially in the video gaming industry? And that was the topic of my research. So I started it, which I will talk about the first portion of it, which is I started it by doing a survey among college-age students, and to talk in general about basic information security, pure basic. And I did this survey using the Likert module, and then the Likert scale. And then I had the survey to be anonymous, so there is no judgment, there is nothing. So I wanted to make sure that they will be truthful also in completing it. And it's not to my surprise, but it did really confirm my my assessment is that I found some of the questions, for example, is like simple use of password, like how often do you change your password? You know, when you are in industry, you know that you have to change it monthly if it is an admin, or every 90 days, it has to be complex, all that. And then when you ask the new age, computer scientists out there and the cybersecurity students and my college age students, those questions, I wanted to understand, really understand why we have this security measures in place to begin with, and do they implement it? Do they implement it at the personal level, or only at because when they are using the computer that they access the university with, or at their workplace? And it was very interesting to see the outcome of the survey. And all cyber professionals out there, we have a lot of work ahead of us, I can tell you that. So for example, the survey revealed that only 20% of the entire population, they are using, they change their password every 3 months, 20%. So you can look at 80% are not doing it, right? And then when I look at a different question was like, have you installed an anti-malware software in your computer? So I see 70% of them did install it. But when you have the follow-on questions, do you know why you install it, or what was it? And we keep it open. And then they were like, it came with our desktop. So it was like, okay, it came with the computer. Have you renewed it? No, we didn't know even we need to renew our anti-malware software. So it is shocking, right? And then I had other questions about like, do you use the same password, for example, for university, the same as what you use for your gaming? So 50% they said yes, 50% they said no. So we still have a lot of work to do on our hand here. And then another thing I asked about the PIIs and the personal identifying information they put on their gaming console when they start playing games and so forth. And they had no problem putting their name if they ask for a driver's license number, address, phone number, credit card information, all of that, no problem. They have basically volunteered this information to have a free game and stuff like that. And then the other question that was really shocking to me, also the answer, is that they students trust the other gamers that they play games with as well. So they have no problem sharing information with them. They are like their friends right now. And what I'm saying, why it is very important for us to start actually pushing cybersecurity awareness program, cybersecurity education to even middle schoolers and on, is because some of the reports that came out recently saying that the cyber criminals, as well as the state-sponsored criminal, are actually targeting college-age students, anybody who's 18 years or older, that they are playing video game to recruit them to perform criminal activities for them. So it's not only we are talking about like in this research, I have twofold for it. One is for using the use of the gaming or the video game in general to be a recruiting tool for those cyber criminals and perform cyber attacks, and obviously stealing the PIIs and all of the information about students. But the other part of it is the awareness for the digital age that will be your employers, the employees, that they will be your colleagues in the future. They don't have that cybersecurity awareness to begin with embedded with them, and they will be clicked before they know it. Like, they are very fast in clicking. So the results really from my research is basically we need to push down the cyber education as early as middle school and on, and basically try to, not because you're a computer science student then you can learn cybersecurity. We want to have cybersecurity education across the board in every field and in every schools we have here, as well as we go into to start them as young as you. Like, if you give your child, for example, a phone, you need to be to make them aware of what they cannot do with it. And with that, I will turn it over to Brian.
Thank you so much, Dr. Strohmeyer. All of you have done a wonderful job of talking about cybersecurity risks from what I think is an appropriately high level. And we have a number of questions in the Q&A from my new good friend, Robert V. Jones, who is the CEO of a cybersecurity company called PreSafe. And I'll start with one of his questions that I had on my list of questions to ask the panel, and that was about zero trust. And I wondered if any of you would like to speak to zero trust strategies and their implementation in various sectors, I suppose.
I guess I'll jump in. So I love zero trust. I don't know if I would consider myself a traditional, or I guess what zero trust is. There's a lot of companies into zero trust right now with a lot of different capabilities. When I first started getting involved with implementing zero trust, I didn't really realize I was doing it. It was just I was working on a government project and there were security requirements set forward, and lo and behold, those security requirements were essentially zero trust, right? Nothing can connect to anything else unless it's authenticated and authorized, and that every single attribute around why those two systems are connecting. Nothing else can come in, right? It's all controlled port protocol, fine-grained access control at the network layer. That's for me, that's extremely important when you start looking at zero trust, is understanding, that segmentation and making sure that you have good, solid segmentation in place. It doesn't help you at all if you have a 3-tier architecture with 3 different subnets, and then you just open up all the ports in between them. I mean, you just wasted subnet space, node space. I've seen companies actually exhaust all of the private IP space before. That was an interesting day at work. And it also cost us millions of dollars to unwind because people started using the cloud and they started, not realizing that they were putting out overlapping CIDRs and stuff like that. But big fan of zero trust myself. I'm not going to point out a specific tool or something like that. I think it's more important to really for people to understand the methodology and the true intent behind zero trust.
Mm-hmm.
If I can add to that a little, so zero trust actually is not really a new term. It's been a new lingo. We have been hearing it recently, but we have always had, and the best practice with us for a long time is security by design, and you secure with zero trust per se from the design. phase of any projects. For example, when we start talking about networking, one of the best practice we do there, there in firewalls, turn off all of your firewalls, don't have anything on, and start granting back. So that's zero trust. Basically, you grant back as you need them after you test them and so forth. So it's been with us for quite a long time.
Brian, I'll just add one thing for small companies who they're not really equipped, or medium-sized companies, to handle zero trust. It prevents, sometimes, not all the time, it may prevent them from being nimble. But I also know from dealing with other companies, the biggest violators of things for zero trust are going to be executives who say, I don't want that, let me use my own device, and you're not putting anything on it. There's always exceptions, and as much as the CISO says, please don't do this, your paycheck comes from there. And then they say, okay, we'll figure out a way to get you on. And then
it goes back to awareness, right? It goes back to cybersecurity awareness, because your user is your number one weakest link, really. So because the user, they will click on the email before even they read it, where it's from or what is it about. So your user, I don't care who you are out there. No matter even if you are my chair of the board, you still need to go through cybersecurity training, because you know what, the criminals are ahead of us. Always. So they are a step ahead. So we need to defend against that. So we need to make sure that we always have a refresher for our C-level people in industry.
Agreed. I still run through phishing campaigns against myself. You know, it's been about 3 or 4 years since somebody got me on one. It was a pretty sophisticated one. It did have some backlash though, because they impersonated one of our company surveys. So then they got mad because I didn't fill out any more company surveys after that. But that was the premise that they got me. They did a really good job of impersonating a company survey that, you know, the company sent out all the time internally, and they spoofed the internal address 100%. And, you know, they got me. I probably should have checked with some other folks first before I clicked on it. But it, you know, like Hala was saying, it was a reminder for me, right? Because I was in a rush. That's what happened. They got me because I was emotionally thinking about other things, work related, and focused on other topics. And I was at a conference trying to work with people and talk to people and deal with some other things at the same time. And then, you know, some other things occurred, and then they were like, hey, this needs. So yeah, I got caught. So it's always good to retest.
If I chime a little bit on that too, we are really good about detection, but we really lag in the response side of it. On my previous research about the ransomware attacks and how Colonial Pipeline and others, but in general, and from my experience in industry, we don't have the response. We don't teach even our students, okay, you got attacked, what next? What you're supposed to do, right? So we need to start looking at that, because also from industry perspective, you can put as much as you want from budget perspective in preventative measures, but if you don't prepare for the response, because you will get attacked, but if you don't have the response down, then it is a problem. So we need always to dedicate some of the resources into the response.
Excellent, excellent. I'd like to come back to Alex's point that he made about a cadence of interaction and the tools that are used to basically discriminate between the cadence that a human has and perhaps the lack thereof that might be associated with an automated attacker. Alex and anybody else, are you noticing that, like, maybe the programmers behind these attacks, are they getting smarter about trying to look more human so that the cadence is less, how should we say, looks less automated, for lack of a better word?
They're definitely getting more sophisticated from what we've seen in terms of analyzing various logs. However, there are still certain patterns, because anytime someone's doing a program, right, no matter what, you have pseudo-random numbers, you have different variable distributions and so forth, you're still going to have some pattern. And even humans have patterns. The difference is that the human interaction will really depend on what the topic is they're doing. In other words, am I just trying to access an asset? Am I doing that randomly? And an attacker doesn't have a tremendous amount of time. They need to get in, try and get what they want and get out before they get noticed. So they are getting very sophisticated, though. They're trying different techniques. As far as software, I know Darktrace is doing certain things in artificial intelligence. I'm not sure who else, and I know there's a couple of other companies doing stuff in it, but I don't know what they're doing because obviously that's proprietary, and I couldn't give you any other companies.
There is a company, Alex, which I was going to reach out to you after the conference. There's another company called Deduce, and I can introduce you to some folks over there if you want to talk to them. But they collect a lot of retail data about, what people are logging in with, right? He logged in with his phone. This is the phone that we've seen him on for the past, 2 years, 3 years, right? Now, an anomaly to that is, okay, well, Paul shows up and all of a sudden he's coming from Canada and he's on a different type of phone. Why? Right? He actually has a bunch of deals with a bunch of retail companies, over 150 some, probably more now, where he's getting that type of contextual information. They actually caught a hacker one time because they caught him because while he was doing his hack, he decided he wanted to go over to Amazon and buy something. And then that's when they made the connection between what he was hacking and his personal persona or identity online. And they said, all right, now we got you, because they made the connection between the two devices and knew it was him by all the other data that was there. But as soon as he slipped up, right, it was that one mistake, and somebody was sitting there just waiting to connect those two dots. And once they connected those two dots together, they knew who it was, and they were able to go after him and take him down after that.
Very, very good. I am afraid that we will have to leave it there because we are at our 1:30 time limit. We are going to have a part 2 of this session with 3 other panelists tomorrow at I think 11:30 Eastern time, Eastern US time. And there's certainly a lot of additional questions I'd love to ask our panel, some of which have to do very much with human factors, but I really appreciate everyone's time today. So thank you very much again to Dr. Strohmeyer, to Dr. Pelaez, and to Paul Heman. And this was great. This was a very lively discussion. I think we all interacted very well, and thank you all for your time. This is great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.